people. It's better for everybody.
God damn, I am a treat.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm not doing introductions because we don't do that. That was old podcast. We're new podcast.
Yeah, you see me wearing a tie? Hell no.
I
This is
almost was. I considered leaving mine on from work, but I took it off. This is a casual
yeah.
place.
That's since I've started working, it really kind of fucked up how I dress and stuff because I used to love, like just wearing like button downs and like looking good. And then like as soon as I'm done working, now I just like I can't wait for
You're
just
just
like
ripping it off.
t-shirt,
Ah.
basketball shorts and just looking like a fucking slob.
See, I'm kind of the opposite. I used to always like for the first 6 years at my current job or more, it was like, yeah, I'll wear a polo to work because that's dressing up. And so then that kind of turned into my, yeah, I wear the polo type shirts. And now I'm up to like actual collared button up shirts. And that's kind of what I wear on a normal
Yeah.
basis.
Well, I mean, where I work, we actually or my company just updated their dress code. So, like, before I would have to, you would either have to buy one of their t-shirts, which is like $20, and I refuse to fucking do
Yeah.
that. Well, I mean, they take it out of your paycheck, but fuck you, that's my money. Um, but you can do that, and if you do that, you can wear jeans. If you don't do that, you had to wear a vest, or if you worked in like the cafe, you had to wear an apron. Um, and so I always just wore the vest because you don't have to pay for the vest. They just have a bunch of dirty, horrible vests in a closet, and you
Oh, so
just
like you don't even get to take them home. It's just,
right. You take it off when you're done, which I kind of like. I kind of like being able to like shed the retail skin, if you will, like a fucking viper. Um, it's like they just updated, so now you don't have to wear the vest. But if you don't wear their t-shirt, you still can't wear jeans. And I'm just like, I think I'm just holding out to the point where I can like literally not wear anything of theirs except a name tag. Um, like right now, you can even wear a t-shirt as long as it doesn't have any like logo on
do you
it.
have to wear a shirt under the vest or can you just like,
Well, it was supposed to be like a collared shirt, of some sort. People didn't really follow that though. I did because I have all these shirts I bought
because
when I
you're a
got the job, and
good
it's
little
like
boy?
I might as well wear them. But now like people think I'm a manager at times because I'm like the only one wearing like a collared shirt.
Well, in fairness, and we've talked about this on the show before, a key in life is just to look like you're something, not to actually be. I mean, that's how we've covered like PAX East twice.
That's
You
how I got the job. Actually, it was kind of like that episode of Seinfeld when George quit and he like came back and just pretended like it never happened. Like I just started showing up
showing up.
for work, and yeah,
It's like we'll call you. You're like, so,
yeah, right.
so I'm in tomorrow at 9. They're like, no, we'll call you at 9 o'clock. See you then.
Yeah, it's and then it became like ask Ben, he might know. It's,
I like it. I'm gonna try that, but with like a really high profile job, like
yeah, I was thinking about just going to Game Informer and just walking in
yeah,
like, nah,
reporting for duty.
I've been writing here for about 6 months. I don't know what you're talking about.
Or you just you hired me 3 years ago.
You
I've been
like just
embedded deep to
there's
cover
a
this story.
you might not have gotten to it. I don't know how much of that show you've watched, but in It's Always Sunny, there's an episode where like Mac like gets a like him and Charlie get a mailroom job, but he wants to move up, so he just pretends to be somebody else in like the higher offices, and he's just like eavesdropping on people's conversations and shit, and just like yeah, totally. And,
It, it works. Like I said, that's you. You start a blog and call yourself a games journalist, and suddenly you're getting media passes and like doing interviews, and you're just like, yeah, I totally what I, this is what I do.
yeah, I actually make my own PAX badges. That's why I haven't been to one yet. I haven't made the right
Right
one.
one, yeah. Those bastards keep changing them every show.
They're a different color and different font. And I just it started with just like a piece of paper. I just wrote press on it.
Well, that's what we went out to dinner with my family last Friday. We do it almost every Friday, and my brother was like, he kept showing me this article about this woman. I think it was relatively locally, but I think it was in Michigan, that got arrested for using a fake license plate, and it showed the picture of the license plate, and it was literally just a rectangular piece of cardboard with numbers drawn on it with like magic marker, and it said like New York on it. It's like, yeah, that's convincing, but you know how the internet is too. It was likely out of context, and it's kind of made me wonder if like she completely flat out made up a license plate, or if maybe she like lost her license plate, and like, because to me
It's
those are
just
two
so
different.
clever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, they're two different crimes. Like, if you're completely forging a fake license plate, yeah, that's ridiculous to. I mean, it happens, but at least make it look good. But if you maybe lost your license plate and you don't know what to do in the meantime, so you put your actual like plate numbers on a temporary piece of cardboard,
Then
like
you're a moron.
you're a lower level moron
Like
than
how one nobody loses their license plate. Like it doesn't just like
they
whoops.
get. You'd be surprised how often they get stolen. Like,
But that's not losing.
well,
That's
no, but
theft. Like
I'm just saying, like, maybe she came out and found out, oh crap, I don't have a license plate. My guess is she just
better
completely
draw one on. I
forged it.
remember the
Yeah,
number. I think
I think I'll make
it's
it
my
up.
phone number.
Yeah,
Um,
but
yeah.
anyway, I as usual.
Either way, when legal documents or anything of that nature are missing, probably your best course of action isn't to just like mock one up.
Yeah,
You know,
except for PAX badges, because you can't. They're impossible to buy.
I don't care how close you were to getting into art school. It's really not what it's about.
Uh, there's some pretty good forgeries out there for license plates, though.
Yeah. Um, Speaking of forgeries, have you heard of this? Well, I guess we're getting kind of into game news. Did you hear about the Coleco Chameleon thing?
No.
This was really. I heard about this on the Bombcast, and you like. If you want a like real accurate take on it, like Jeff Gersman talks about what happened with this thing, but I just thought this part was really funny. So there's like this project too from some developer where they were trying to like make like a modern like kind of retro console, and like the way they were selling it was like, oh, and you'll like we won't let developers patch their games for this, and which doesn't actually sound good if you
No.
think about it
Yeah.
at all.
I mean,
Like,
it's easy to sit and be nostalgic about that. Like, remember when you bought the game and you just had it? But what we forget is, remember when you bought the game and it was broken and you're like, fuck.
and you couldn't do anything about it.
Right.
Yeah, and also we just live in a different time, and like the whole thing was sort of bred out of this like nostalgia glasses idea of like, weren't games great back then? Some were, but honestly, a lot of them were fucking terrible. Um, just look at the Genesis. So like they were working on that, and then the project went kind of quiet for a while, and then it like somehow they got like wrapped up in like the Coleco brand, like the people who owned the name Coleco, I guess, started working with them, and they were working on this console, which like the prototype looked like basically they took the Atari Jaguar, and that was what the system looked like, and it had kind of its own controller and shit, but really it was just a bunch of Atari Jaguars. And so when they were getting ready to like announce a Kickstarter for it, they posted a picture of it, which like if you remember with like especially with the N64 and stuff, it was like that clear colored plastic. Like they would do it for consoles and controllers and stuff, so you could see the inside of it.
Right. It was cool.
It was cool. And they did that. They posted a picture of it, and so people saw the inside of this thing, and they were like, "What the fuck is that? What is this? Like, what actually did they make?" And the internet basically determined that they took the inside of a Super Nintendo and put it in an Atari Jaguar, and they added like a capture card, an old capture card, just to make it look like there was more to it. And once they pointed that out, they took the picture down. They didn't pull out a Kickstarter, and like it was just announced that like the Coleco brand is like, yeah, we're not doing this with them.
Yeah.
Uh, it turns out these
Whoops.
because all they could demonstrate with it was that it played a Super Nintendo game.
Well, of
Basically,
course, if you take the guts out and put it in a different case, it's
yeah. So I thought that was really funny, and like I said on the Giant Bombcast this week, Jeff Gerstmann goes into a lot more funny detail about the weird development of that fucking thing. But I thought that was hilarious.
I what I like is the idea that you can do something like that and post it and think that nobody on the internet will notice.
Yeah, like because there are people who like just for fun take apart Super Nintendos and just put in like a toaster or
right,
something,
or build
make it
custom
work.
boxes for them, and yeah,
Yeah, like and so they probably know what the fuck that looks like, the innards of that thing. Um, so yeah, that was something that happened in the news.
well, I'm glad you had that because I only had like two news items, and I don't know that I want. Well, I guess we can do this backwards today. Well, the Lionhead Studios closure, that was like the big thing this week,
Yeah,
and it seems like it was more of a shock to Lionhead Studios employees than it is to me. And I don't want to make it sound like I don't care. It sucks anytime a studio, especially when it happens the way it did, because
yeah,
from the sounds of it, especially after we heard about it Monday, then yesterday we got more details on it. But it sounds like the people making the new Fable Legends game, that's what they had in development, had no idea. Like, I mean, that development, I said something about how troubled that development seemed anyway. That wasn't even the phrasing I used, but it's been delayed a bunch, and it's been kind of a weird.
Like I've heard from a lot of people who have like kind of seen what they were working on. Like it wasn't a proper Fable game, which like a lot of people wanted from that studio at this point. Because like before that, they did the fucking Kinect game and all that stuff. And
on rail shooter Fable. Woohoo!
so what Legends was trying to do, I heard it was not. It didn't like a lot of people weren't confident that it was going to do it well.
Right. It was like one of those weird, like almost. I thought it sounded like a Left 4 Dead type, like asynchronous. I think multiplayer is a stupid term that the industry uses. Almost like a tower. I don't know. It was this weird. It was its own thing, but it was not an RPG, an action RPG like Fable.
Right.
But
I'm not surprised, but I have to imagine it probably came as a shock to them. But really, a lot of what Microsoft has been doing lately kind of makes you question their like, not question their commitment to games, because I think they're committed to games, but their direction. They seem kind of all over the place right now, where they're like talking about like how they're linking up how they're planning on linking up Xbox One with like PC and stuff, and
Windows
like
10, baby.
right, and it's you have to imagine from their perspective, if any, like really you just sort of learn no studio is really safe
Right.
in the game industry, but you have to imagine like when you consider where Lionhead started, kind of like they were Microsoft's little like like pet project. Like Fable was a huge thing for them, and it just always seemed like Lionhead was this like protected part of their whole game development future. And like I said, no one's really safe when they get in this business.
Yeah, but to bring an awesome sports ball analogy into it, when that's, like your designated hitter, that's like that special, like he's there to make the big plays, and he's like almost your mascot on the team.
Yeah.
And if they've struck out the last 20 times in a row, you can't just keep putting them out there. So I mean,
I think a better analogy is kind of like the NFL free agency started today.
Oh, that's been interesting too.
And the Eagles last season had signed at least two guys, you could argue a few more, to dumb, ridiculously long, expensive contracts that didn't pay off. And you would think, like, every fan thought, like, oh, fuck, dude, we're going to be here with these guys for another 3 years. And they got rid of them. Like, there's no such thing as security. Like, you're going to, you no matter how weird it seems, you can get moved, even if it doesn't seem fair.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. It's wishy-washy and kind of confusing to me as what Fable Legends even was, and there was never really any. There was like no excitement behind it, even from Fable fans.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It was unsurprising. It sucks because I mean it could have been a really cool game. We won't know because it never. But I mean, from the sounds of it, I know it's been in beta for a while too, and that seemed like part of the problem. It's like,
but I think if there was more, well, I mean, obviously you never know until it's a finished project and you've played it. But I think if there was more potential for it to be really good, I think Microsoft would have obviously stuck with it.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of what I was getting at with the beta. Is it almost to me feels like it's like, well, they got it to this part and they're trying to play test it and. It almost feels like they realize like this just really doesn't work. Like
I think if Lionhead had made something that proved worth the investment, like I said, like Lionhead was this, probably as close to protected under Microsoft as any studio they work with, and if what they weren't working on, what they were working on wasn't worth it, then. That I think that says a lot. That's pretty damning about the development of that game. Not the people who worked on it, but just like it seems like the project just fumbled.
Yeah, but like I said, I'm not going to miss the game. It does suck for the and I can't imagine because it's been in development to be that close. I mean, to be in beta for that long and then to not get to release your game, that'd be like not just writing a book and getting almost to the end, but writing a book. Having it sent to the editor, having them send it back with some edits, being almost done making all the corrections, and then just be like, you know what, light it on fire and just burn the whole manuscript to be like, never mind. Like, it sucks because you, as developers, either coders or designers or the art people, I mean, you're pouring your heart and soul. That work is hard work. Yeah. And for it to not come to fruition. Although... I wonder which is worse, like to never get to see your game released or to have the game released and be like completely critically like panned by, not even critically panned, just like one of those games that comes out and everybody's like, this game sucks.
Like, I know there's a lot of stories about like games getting canceled and the developers being like, fuck, man, we put so much into it. But I wonder how many times like, it's like, well, thank God. I can move on to something else that I actually care about.
And that was the other thing I was going to say when you're talking about Fable and their status with Microsoft as being protected and stuff. But the problem was they were also like completely tied to the Fable series. And it's like, I wonder how many of those people on the team are like, well, good, now I can work on something that's not Fable.
So something that's good.
Yeah.
That is the other thing that came out of this where I'm like kind of like, I've always been a little baffled by this because I was really hyped for the first Fable, and I actually enjoyed it a lot when I played it. I have kind of the same story with the first two games. Really excited for it, played it, liked it, and then like a week after beating it, I was like, wait a minute, that wasn't fucking good. Like that was shallow, mindless bullshit.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I didn't play the first one. I played the second one. And it was one of those things, I liked it, but it was always a guilty pleasure type game. I mean, there was nothing great about it. It wasn't particularly deep. The gameplay itself wasn't particularly good. You spent most of your time digging up condoms, like, because that's what I want to use as a condom my dog found buried in the mud that may or may not have been used. Who knows?
That's a good boy. Yeah. Right there. Good, good boy. Roll over.
Communicating in nothing but, like, farts and belches, but...
Yeah, like... And all that silly stuff is, that's okay. It's the fact that there was really and this goes back to the whole fucking Peter Molyneux dilemma of like just he always oversold it. Yeah. And I was too fucking naive and I didn't know anything about Peter Molyneux to be like bullshit. Maybe I should have known after the first Fable, but I thought like, well, after the first Fable and the backlash, of course he'll be more like, okay, we actually really need to like build this game up as a world if we're going to call it an RPG. And instead, it kind of has that almost Final Fantasy problem of like, is this really a huge world or is this a long series of hallways?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you call it a town, but really, is this just a glorified hallway?
But like I said, I mean, I got through it, and that's more than I can say for a lot of
Yeah,
games. Like,
it's playable. They're perfectly all right. But I didn't like. I was sort of caught off guard by how many articles came out after this Lionhead closing of like, Fable 3 wasn't that bad, but you all wrote the reviews saying it was that bad.
Welcome to games criticism.
It's like you can't give that the score you did and just make the criticisms you made and be like, oh, it's so tragic they'll never be able to make another one. That was 3.
And see here, I think is where we're running into the difference between actually playing it and being like, oh, this sucks, and then falling for that hype. Like, but if they just did a few things differently,
right? And I think that that will always be Fable's story. Is like, man, that last one it had its problems, but if they fix those problems, man, it could be good. And it's like, even though I think it would be a more interesting project than Fable Legends to me, I really didn't want to see another Fable game. I was kind of just like, okay, this is what this series is, which is kind of disappointing. It's either overhyped or it would just be kind of like forgettable. Like, I don't think it would really do much to stand out from, the other kind of just bland fantasy RPGs out there.
That's professional. Not turning my
tell him I said hi.
ringer on. Ben says hi, anonymous caller from a number that looks like it's outside the United States. Welcome to I should have answered and held the phone up and been like, welcome to the podcast.
Turns out we are taking calls.
Although that would be a risky gamble because I'd be like that asshole that's like, oh, fuck you. You're going to telemarket call me during a podcast, and I put him on and it'd be like a bill collector for some bill I forgot to pay and be like, oh, that's embarrassing. But anyway, yeah. I wonder how much of this like reaction to the closure too is, I think like a lot of people, I kind of thought Legends was going to be just this kind of bridge game. Like when I found out what it was, like I said, I can't even describe it properly, but some kind of multiplayer centric whatever. I kind of assumed that it was a Fable title to kind of carry over until they could release a Fable 4.
Yeah, like honestly, I think hell, it kind of sums up a lot of my questions about the Xbox One. Like, because I thought one of the first, I thought it would be a given that when that system was getting ready to come out, Lionhead would at least be working on something pretty big in scope. Like, you want the developers that you're teaming up with to be doing what they can to like push your new system and stuff. And the fact that they were working on Fable Legends and like not a proper Fable game and not anything else kind of more interesting. It was just sort of this weird this weird project that's just tied to the brand. I like kind of sums up, I think, a lot of the problems that system has, where it's like developers are working on kind of these weird things for them. They're not really swinging for the fences.
Right.
So there's really nothing to get excited about for that system. And now Microsoft just seems to be like, it's not that exciting, but it works with PC. So.
And I didn't really think about it until you said something a minute ago about, you're like, well, Microsoft not as invested in. Well, they are. I think they're really at the point where to me, they almost only feel invested in games because they just released the Xbox One, so now they kind of have to be. Like, it didn't take off like they hoped it would. It's pretty obvious that at least right now, PlayStation 4 was a clear winner on that like dual release thing.
Yeah.
And that seems to have caught Microsoft off guard, and now they're just like, well, shit, like we can't just quit because we got too much invested in it. But
I think they're trying to find a way to make there's my ringer. Jesus.
It's the same person. It's Derek. He desperately wants on the show.
I had to know that the A's fucking destroyed the White Sox because it's spring training and nothing matters.
Those games are
Um,
the most important thing.
yeah, well, I mean, I don't care. I don't care what time of year it is. It always feels good to watch your baseball team win 12-3. Um, but I think Microsoft is like they're kind of at a point where they're trying to make their gaming unit like profitable. And they're kind of in a crappy situation where like the 360 was this undisputed success, but their next system is, it's kind of been a flop in a lot of ways. I mean, obviously they're not a Nintendo country, but and I don't think they're hurting for money because it's fucking Microsoft, but I think they want that area of their business to be profitable. So they're trying to find a new way to go forward with that maybe isn't so dependent on their console hardware selling a
Right,
fuck ton.
which makes sense when we're seeing more and more of this. Oh, well, and they kind of backtracked a little this week, but with, what was the one? Quantum Break, I think, where they announced it was going to come out at the same time on Windows 10. And then, of course, we talked about it. Then all the whiny ass fanboys for the Xbox were like, oh, you lied to us. It was supposed to be exclusive. It's like, why do you fucking care if you can play it on Windows, too? Like,
Right.
we talked about if you bought, the only time I could see being mad is if you specifically bought the system to play the game. But if you specifically
Yeah.
bought the
Well,
system to play a game that's not out yet, you're an idiot. So
yeah, like who are these people who buy a system for one game?
that's not,
You-
yeah, that's at the time that the system came out, that one game was a year and a half off. Although
Like,
they,
I mean, I can obviously point to like Bloodborne and stuff, like what reasons why I wanted a PS4, but the plural there is important. There were a lot of reasons
well,
I want.
and on top of that, you wanted it in part because of Bloodborne, but it's not like Microsoft said it's not coming out on Xbox One. Now it's coming out on Windows.
Right.
It's just like you bought the PlayStation 4 in part because you were interested in Bloodborne. So if it came to PC
Yeah.
as well, that doesn't affect the fact that you have a PS4 to play Bloodborne because you can still fucking
And
play.
also, you like think a little bit. Like all the Alan Wake games are, well, Alan Wake content is on PC as well. Like if you have a PC that you think could have played that game, yeah, just because like a developer or Microsoft comes out and says like this will only be on that system, that doesn't mean anything.
Well,
Like
and
Rise of the
here's
Tomb Raider will come out on PS4, and that was like for forever they were saying like that's locked down.
down, right.
You know,
Well, but here's the part that made it the most ridiculous to me for people to be mad. They're like, you said it was going to be exclusive, Microsoft. It's like, yeah, well, it's still a Microsoft exclusive because it's coming out to Microsoft Xbox and Microsoft Windows. Like, how are you mad at them for releasing it on more than one of their own platforms? Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, like people feel like they've been duped, but really it's it's your own dumb spending habits. Like,
right.
and I'm not saying I'm above it. I fucking buy shit I shouldn't buy, and I have buyer's remorse. I just bought a couch because the cup holders glow blue.
That's a good
And
enough reason to buy a couch in my books.
yeah, oh, the couch is amazing.
You
It's
worthless asshole back there. You don't have cup holders or anything that glows blue.
yeah, but
I was
it's
happy with my couch until you told me that. Now I'm going to throw it out after the
and
show.
it's called the Starship. That's the model name.
Models the Starship.
And it's the most comfortable goddamn couch. And we had to get rid of our old couches, and I was happy to because they were stiff pieces of shit. But we won't get our new couch until Sunday. So right now our living room just has like these like patio chairs
That works too,
instead.
though. As long as
And
you
it's
have a place
still
to put your ass, you're set.
yeah, and it's still better than that old couch. And I'm fucking on cloud nine. But maybe I won't feel that way a week from now when my dog tears it up, and I'm like, holy shit, we just spent like over $2,000 on a fucking couch.
Yeah, that's always the scary part was when you have because our animals were like good and older and not chewing on stuff when we got our new couch, and I was still terrified because that's a lot of fucking money. And it's like if I buy this thing and then they ruin it, somebody's dying, either me or them.
Yeah.
But
Well, I'd be worried that they would like activate the couch's self defense mechanism, and then like I come home, and my dogs are dead, and my couch is transformed into a fucking robot.
Well, when you told me what the name of your couch was, it could reminded me of an article I just read today because it was just posted today from Amanda Farrow. I think I probably butchered her last name. From Loot Crate, the Daily Crate, about I didn't realize Space Team. I had heard about the game when it was like a mobile like whatever, but they
Mhm.
released like a board game version of it. And I don't even know how to describe it particularly since I haven't played it, but I know it has to do with like anybody that's playing, you comprise a team on a spaceship. You have to like get the ship built, but all these problems arise, and the whole game's centered around the idea of like you only have so much time to fix these problems, but the problems are like kind of confusing and complex. So you have to find a way to communicate with the other players, like what you need to fix. Like it's co-op basically, but it sounds like hectic and just ridiculous and a lot of fun. And it sounds like the perfect game for your new couch because you're basically fucking sitting in
Yeah.
like a Starfleet command
I
center.
like it. I just spent like over 100 some dollars on Blu-rays that like Amazon was having a sale, so I just bought a bunch of shit, and I have those all set up. Like like I feel like it would be very appropriate to play No Man's Sky in on a couch called the Starship,
Yeah.
and like I think I just want that feeling. But who knows with that game?
Yeah, I
People have
mean,
kind of got their hands on it now, and it sounds interesting as hell, but it also sounds like it could go really wrong.
I'm worried
Um,
that it'll just be boring.
that
Like,
yeah, that's what I mean. Is like people like the resources and stuff you get like sound interesting to me. That you're you're not collecting wood necessarily. Like you're collecting like elements. Like
Woodonium.
you do yeah you do get wood, but you're what you're getting out of that is carbon, and you're like you trying to use these elements to create what you need for equipment and shit. But we still don't know anything about how that game like.
Right.
Okay, you get these resources, you make that thing, but once you have that thing, what do you do?
Well, and that's what it sounds really interesting because they also talk about how it's like, well, you can craft or you can trade and sell and get stuff that way. And it's like, well, I mean, it's the kind of game that in theory sounds really cool. But then you
Yeah,
also think about okay, and then you start to think about how that would actually feel to play and you're like, wow, well, this could just be really dull. I mean,
yeah.
a great
Well, I mean,
example is Elite Dangerous. Like that game, I know I talked about it at the beginning of last year. I was playing it. It's an amazing flight simulator. Like it's so much fun to just like my favorite thing to do. And this is a kind of a good indication of what the game, that both its positives and negatives. But like my favorite thing to do was when you find a new space station was to like dock your ship because the whole like landing and flying and having to line up things and maneuver your ship was awesome. But then you get out into space, it's like now I can fly around and scan rocks. Like it. So that's where I'm worried about No Man's Sky. But right after we talked about it last week on the show, I read some articles about like the speech system or the language system in the game, and I don't know if you read any of those.
I haven't read any of them. I've heard about their language system.
It's one of those games that like every time I start to like feel like I probably won't end up playing this. Then I read something like that, and basically there's like five different alien languages in the game, and you have to like learn them, like literally, like not like level up and learn them. Like at first you'll land on the planet and run into an alien, and if you're trying to trade with them, they'll speak in their native tongue, and you're like, oh, I have no idea what you're fucking saying. And as you communicate, you can try to like they made it really really simple. They're not like the interview I read. They specifically mentioned it's like these aren't like Klingon where it's an actual full language with grammar and this and that, but basically they're like word swaps. So if you say I want to buy this, the sentence would still be I want to buy this, but the words that represent each thing are different for each language. So you basically like trial and error or just like working with other players figure out what words mean
Yeah.
what. And that sounds
Uh,
really fucking cool to me. Like it's
See, I heard that uh, like you can like communicate that way, but I heard like learning the language was as basic as like you go up to like a pillar or something, and you like hit the button, and it'll, hey, you learned that word or something, and
Oh well, see that could be, and then that would diminish my interest.
it was kind of like the language in Final Fantasy X, Albed,
Yeah.
where you just found like
Words.
you found letters in that
Yeah.
one, and it would just swap them out next time you heard a sentence from one of those
And it
characters.
may be like that, but then if you figure that these pillars are spread out among these billions of procedurally generated planets, like, because one of the things they talked about is how players will be able to, like, as you learn stuff, it's true for the same swaps and stuff that are true for me are true for you. Like, it's a set language, so you can work together with other players. I'm sure there'll be websites that give you translations with probably within 24 fucking hours because people are ridiculously good at getting that stuff on the internet anymore.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting wrinkle. So you read something like that, and you're like, well, that's kind of a cool idea. But again, if that's something that sounds cooler on paper than in practice, it might be.
Well, yeah, and we kind of talked about it last week, but just the whole thing with that game right now for me is like a lot of the stuff they're talking about sounds cool. All I have seen is aimlessly wandering these procedurally generated planets.
But
Um,
and that's my complaint. But at the same time, I can't. As soon as I say that, I think back to how many times I said, "Man, I kind of like a casual game that just lets me wander and explore and discover cool things, like, and not worry about constant like gunplay and this and that." So
so,
I don't know.
you know, and I'm kind of like, that is fine if like the problem is we've been seeing nothing but that for the entirety of this game's development. Is like, yeah, okay, it's pretty and there's a lot of it. What do I do there? And that's the big question, and nobody really has that answer yet. Probably won't until the game comes out, which is, you know, what is there an end game, and if there is, like, what is it? You know, what are you like putting the work in for? Or are you just, you know, are you just there to hang out?
And I don't think that just there to hang out's necessarily bad, except that's where you start to get into the issue we talked about last week with the $60 price tag.
Right, you
Like,
know, what's that going to be? Is that is a procedurally generated galaxy of just materials worth $60 to you? That will be an interesting question. If that is the question, you know, like, because like I said, there might be a lot more to this game. It's just, yeah, I'm kind of troubled that we haven't seen much more hints of that.
but
Seeing as how the release date's June.
but you know what the really cool thing is? You don't have to buy it before it comes out. We can wait till it comes out and like see what the game actually is. That was one of my complaints. I don't think with this game, but last week people were bitching about something, and it's like, you know what? None of that matter. That only matters up till release day, or you could just wait till like a couple days after it comes out or a week after it comes out and see. Like, a lot of times we act like we have to know if we're going to buy a game before it comes out, and there's nothing wrong with. And I get that, because if you're like me, a lot of times when a new big game is coming out, you want to be on the leading edge of it so you don't feel like everybody else knows something before you do. But really,
Right.
there's nothing wrong with waiting to buy something. So,
You know, I had that crisis a bit with the Division these last couple of days, where like I'm really curious about that game, but like I'm also kind of nervous, and I really, you know, like I said, I just bought a fuck ton of Blu-rays. I probably shouldn't be spending more of my money, um, even though I do have some to spare. But like you know, I kind of came to this point where I'm like, you know, let's see where that game is for people, you know, maybe a month down the road, or so, you know, just give it a little time, because this is like, because it's so online centric, like it's a game that people can't even really review yet, because it's like, you know, they need to spend time with it, playing with other people, and
well,
and you don't know how, like, you don't know how people are going to receive that game overall. So it's like, is this fucking going to get monotonous as shit for people, or is it, you know, gonna
right. And
stay?
it does run that risk. I talked about that after the beta. Like, the single player stuff was fine, but it wasn't particularly compelling. And it is very much a game. And I saw somebody else talking about it, and they said, man, this is the epitome of boredom. but they're like one day in. It's like, well, that could go
Yeah.
either way. But I get their feeling because I even after the beta, I kind of had that fear, like, well, this could be Destiny all over again. Like it's first really, I understand there's been more added to Destiny now, and now people are kind of liking it more. But that was the big complaint. There was like,
Right. And that's something that could happen with the Division is like, maybe we're at a point now where like some games are like some people won't like it, but they might be more considered platforms for more content than they are just, here's the release and that is that and that's the game.
and I wonder how much of that is just our expectations anymore on a big release. Like,
Yeah, because like in the, well, you can't help but feel for people who like they spend the $60 hoping for the game and then it turns out like, and you can look at Destiny as like on one hand it's great that like they put some content together that was like actually interesting, and now the game as it stands is probably worth its price. I would say I've enjoyed it. I still play it here and there, but like it's gotta suck when like I have to spend even more money for the game I thought I was buying in the first place, and I've been saying it for weeks is like I'm convinced Street Fighter V will probably be a very good fighting game year, probably less, but it's pretty fucked up right now that like a game that does not have any of its modes in yet, and it has so little characters. Like there's a report that came out that like it's not selling well, and I'm like, no fucking shit. You didn't put anything in it. You limited it down to 16 characters. It's a game that's really not ready to come out, but because you're treating it like a platform, you can kind of release it now and just like, like I said, in a year, it'll probably be fine.
I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted. There's like a June bug that's in here and is about to climb right over my webcam. Like, come on, buddy. I was hoping for a cameo. Now he's turned away from it. Sorry.
So,
the things that entertain me, that's...
ladies and gentlemen, our co-host, Eric Grimm. He's back.
Yes. But no, I completely agree. Street Fighter is probably the best example of that. But things like the Division and Destiny, more so. The other thing to keep in mind is I think a lot of times we're comparing that to something like World of Warcraft. I know that neither of us, I played it a long time ago and you never really got into it. But I think a lot of people, oh God, it flew right at my face.
Would you like to take a break to kill it?
No, I'm not going to kill it. He's a harmless little bug. He's just exploring.
He just attacked you.
Well, that's true.
A soul in my
but
book.
Can you blame anybody that attacks me for doing so? Like,
absolutely not.
Right.
Who do you think hired this guy?
But anyway, like we compare it to things like EverQuest and World of Warcraft, and it's like, well, those games have a buttload of content, but they've been out for over a decade. So, and it's not like those games had all that content when they released. So I think in a way, some of our expectations are a little skewed as well.
Sure.
And then of course there's some gamers that are just never happy with anything. So,
well, I mean, like, yeah, and it's also kind of it's a it's kind of the running joke, but it also sometimes feels like, oh, I'm paying $60 to basically beta test this shit for you to make sure that you get everything working, and then you release like the cool shit.
Right.
Hopefully, maybe you just release a bunch of crap. So I understand the frustration with that, but it also kind of, to refer back to your earlier point, like, you don't have to buy everything right away.
Right.
You can wait and see how this stuff pans out. And maybe that means like these games that are trying to be platforms don't get that funding they need to keep going. But
I get, and it gets even harder because I get that feeling, like I said, if the next Zelda game was coming out next week and I had a Wii U or ZX or whatever the fuck it's going to end up coming out on. Last thing I heard was both. But, I love Zelda, and I get that feeling like I don't want to be a week or 2 weeks behind everybody else. Like, I want to be right there, before there's any maybe spoilers or before I get, too colored by other people's opinions. So I understand that. And then with a game like The Division or like neither of us are really into it, but like Black Ops or something like that, when you have that multiplayer component, that's even worse because it's like, yeah, I want to put it off, but then when you do enter, you're that far behind everybody else.
Then everybody's gonna fuck you up when you get in there, and that's the big thing with Street Fighter is like in a year will that game will, I think, like I said, I've been saying that game will be fine given enough time to get all its shit together. But by that point, will I want to jump in? Probably not, because
what you need is
I'm not learning with other people. I'm just getting fucking smoked.
That's what you would need is like a major update, like how they would go to Alpha or Turbo or whatever the fuck they do with Street Fighter. It's something to get a bunch of other new players in, so that you at least have, because at least most games anymore have some kind of like skill-based matchmaking. And so as long as there are other new players, but yeah, if you just randomly start playing Street Fighter in 6 months and there hasn't been a major update, chances are there won't be that many new players.
And I mean, like, that's kind of, it's not entirely true, because it's not like there's always people who are playing a game for the first time and they're just learning, and people that suck. And you're never going to be the only noob on any game, and to refer to early 2000s online gaming terminology.
I still use
it. I call everyone I know a noob, because I'm stuck in, I think I'm 13. But
you burnt the dinner, Mom, you noob.
You noob, fucking newbie piece of shit. I'm going to my room. But yeah. I forgot my point. I kind of realized, like, even with all the problems Street Fighter V has, I've kind of wanted to play it, and then it like dawned on me, like, I've always sucked at Street Fighter. I don't like it. Like, it's the way you input your moves has never clicked with me. I've just never been good at it, and that's why Mortal Kombat has always been my sort of fighter to go to. And it's been great. These last 2 games have been good in that series. And I remembered, like, they just improved the netcode for Mortal Kombat X.
And you just improved your net hardware.
Yes, I just got a router. The netcode is better. And so, like, I'm hoping to give that a shot a little bit more and get back into that game. Because I do enjoy that game. I also hate it more than any game on the planet because I'm a fucking sore loser.
I was trying to. There's like 4 DLC characters, or at least 4 that they've been showcasing recently, and out of the 4,
they just released like a new pack for a little.
Yeah, they had what? Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger. Is that one too? Is it Jason and Freddy?
So the first pack for Mortal Kombat X, Freddy Krueger was in 9. For Mortal Kombat X, it was Jason, Tanya, Tremor, and I don't remember the 4th one.
There was a xenomorph in one of them, like from Aliens.
That's in the new one.
The new one, okay.
It was the alien, Leatherface, Triborg, which is a robot that has the styles of Sector, Smoke, and Cyrax, and Cyber Sub-Zero. And I don't remember the other one in that
That's
either.
what I was trying. There was some guy, it might be Leatherface, because I've only seen like thumbnails, and there was like one of them that I'm like, who the fuck is that? Like,
yeah, and those ones are stupid. I'm fucking sick of the goddamn horror movie characters in Mortal Kombat. Even if it kind of fits, it's like
what they
fits
need to
the
do is
tone,
put like Forrest Gump. Like go to a Forrest Gump, and then the guy from Good Will Hunting. Yeah, go with a movie genre that makes no fucking sense in the genre. That would be.
But if I buy DLC, I'll buy Triborg. Maybe Tremor. But it's like those are Mortal Kombat characters to me. I mean, I don't even want all of the Mortal Kombat characters, to be honest. But yeah, I didn't get a chance. I only had time last night to install the new update because I just remembered it came out. For the longest time, I was under this mistaken idea because fucking Twitter told me and this is what I get for just listening to Twitter and not checking shit out myself. I was told that Mortal Kombat XL, the edition that includes all the DLC characters and stuff, was the version with the improved netcode. And like they had somehow separated the two, which sounds like a horrible idea, a really dumb one. Turns out it's so dumb even Warner Bros. Wouldn't do it.
That's pretty dumb.
But I'm dumb too for not checking it out and just taking that at face value, because the reason the people based that off of it was like Ed Boon tweeted about like when he announced the XL edition, he was like, yeah, hey, it's the new edition with all the characters, improved netcode and stuff, and it's like, so people thought it was just like, you know, attributed to just that version, and like, of course that's like, it's a completely insane idea. But it really isn't any more or less insane than the fact that like that improved netcode is not going to go to the PC version of the game.
Well, they're like the 12 people that play it on PC. They're like, it's not worth it.
Well, I mean, fuck. Why would you buy anything from Warner Bros. On Steam anymore? Like, why would you even?
Yeah, there are certain developers that, you know, it's like, oh, they're PC port. Nope.
Well, they're just like, Arkham Knight was the big one, and I mean, we talked it to death during the Game of the Year stuff, but like, I mean, I get kind of a fighting game because there's probably a lot, like, I mean, they had to bust their ass. The improvements they made to the netcode, I've watched some videos on it. Like, these weren't like just as simple as like, oh, just, you know, plug in a value here and, you know, maybe add this server or something. Like, they had to like kind of overhaul how that entire system works, because I don't know how much online you played of the like 9, but it was kind of the same in 9 and X, where like, and it's really not a good way for fighting games to work, where the online play is kind of trying to predict what you and your opponent are doing. Whenever there's like a lag or any sort of hiccup, it keeps the action going smoothly, but your inputs aren't as precise. And so you're not really executing the stuff you mean to, and you kind of have to just sort of predict what the internet thinks your opponent's going to do rather than what your opponent's actually trying to do.
Which is terrible in fighting games when at least 70% of the people playing them are just randomly mashing buttons. Because
right. And I mean, and fighting games have always kind of had this problem, and I guess they always will, because it's so precise, more so than any other sort of multiplayer game. But fighters, it turns out, are the one type of game where if you have a bad connection to a match, it's actually better that it kind of jumps around a little bit, because that way the match is like being more accurate and it's kind of resetting, and it's responding to your inputs a little better. But it also, like, because I have a new router, and because it's just improved netcode, the chances of me getting a bad match go down, and I can keep track of that during the match. Like, you get a ping at the bottom of your screen that you can enable or disable to however much you want, but it's kind of cool that you can see like, how well am I connected, and the game isn't going to try to make shit up while you're in the middle of the fight. Like, you know, if you have a bad connection, you'll know it, but it also, like, it won't be this sort of like ridiculous thing like, well, am I in a bad match, or am I just really fucking sucking at pulling off, you know, this special enhanced move or something. It's, yeah, you know, so I'm pretty excited to get back into that game. It's been a while. I've been craving a fighter. Clearly, if I'm even considering playing Street Fighter, then it's probably a good time to get back in.
Yeah. Especially since, like you said, Street Fighter is a game traditionally that you've, I don't want to say hated, but it's not your style of fighting game.
Well, I mean, take Ollie Ollie 2, which is a game I really enjoyed, but I haven't finished because the way you do tricks in that game are the same sort of inputs you have to put into a Street Fighter, and it's like this quarter circle back straightforward fucking bullshit that like I think I'm doing, but the game's like, nah, not quite.
Nope. Yep.
Your thumb's tilted a little bit. Like who holds a controller like that with your fucking monkey fist, Ben? And it's like, you know what? You're an asshole. And I've always just sort of, that's why I like Mortal Kombat is like, I feel like I can do cool shit. And it's more about when I time that cool shit rather than like, well, will I actually be able to pull that move off? I feel like once you get the inputs, it kind of just, it all comes together a lot better. But that's just my opinion. I know Street Fighter, for most fighting game fans, will win hands down. But
Yeah, well, and that's the difference between Street Fighter is way more on the technical. I am sure people do it for Mortal Kombat and stuff too, but Street Fighter, you have not just the inputs, but you're like, you have to know the hit boxes and the frame advantages and all sorts of shit. Like, I don't know. The thing I liked about Street Fighter, between the two, I had a lot more fun with Mortal Kombat 9 single player. I don't think I ever played it multiplayer. Maybe I tried it once, but
it was pretty rough.
Yeah. And it probably would have been good same couch, but I never play. I don't have any friends, so.
Yeah.
Or a second controller for that matter. But anyway, Street Fighter, I had a lot more fun on the competitive. The netcode was just better. I had very few problems getting into good matches. I mean, you have the chance of any game getting into a match that was laggy, but I really got into the online mode in Street Fighter 4. I liked that a lot, and I think I liked the idea of picking a character and really like learning the ins and outs of that one character and their strengths and how you can use that character. Like, you can learn one character, but you have to learn that one character against every other character in the roster. Like,
right. So you're not even really just learning that one character. You're learning how all the other characters sort of operate.
Right.
But you're specifically learning like how to respond with, your favorite.
Right. So I think I liked that aspect of it. But then I also found out that like it's fun. I played a ton of it, and it's one of those games that like I would get invested enough to be bad, like where I'd be like screaming at my TV and my neighbors probably like, should we call the cops? Like they have the phone in their hands trying to decide if I'm killing my wife or something. But I also realized like as much as I liked that, A, I'm not smart enough, and B, I don't have enough time or dedication to like really, really get competitive with it. Like I said, learn all the hit boxes and frame advantages. And my reflexes suck anyway. Just watch me play Rocket League and you'll figure that out.
Yeah.
But
well, I finished up. And the reason I'm kind of thinking about playing some Mortal Kombat, like one, I have a little break here in March. Once April starts, Dark Souls 3 will come out. That new Ratchet and Clank game will come out. I'm interested to see how that will go. Star Fox, if that's good, I'll probably pick that up. That's also April. But for this month, I have a little bit of breathing room to, add to my fucking other like 5 games I have to play. So I finished up my Dark Souls 2 stream. So I have a little bit of room, and I kind of, I want to sort of keep streaming at least a little bit here and there. So I was thinking like doing kind of a lighter sort of thing outside of my, I want to keep doing longer playthroughs of stuff. Probably some games that normally I wouldn't get around to. But, I think also a stream is a good area to like, hey, come fucking beat me on Mortal Kombat, because you will. And you can hear me fucking complain and cry, and it'll be good times for everyone.
So that's the equivalent of I was trying to stream some Rocket League before the show, and I was having all sorts of problems with like my internet connection. But
yeah, I heard you were having trouble.
Yeah, it sucked because I suck at that game as is. But
that's how I didn't stream it. I think I streamed Rocket League like once. But you would get like before my new router, like you would get like one good match. And then, like, just when you're just jumping around and stuff, like, once my internet decided that's too much to handle, like, that game is, like...
It's the worst if you have lag.
It needs to be... You need to be well-connected. Like,
And what's been so weird with our internet sucked. Like last night, we had a friend over and we were watching Night at the Roxbury on Netflix because that's what we watch, the high class stuff when we have people over.
Right.
And like it kept doing that, where it'd be in the middle of the movie and all of a sudden it would like go down to like the lowest quality where there's like 8 pixels on the screen. And so there's something's up with our internet anyway. But yeah, it was really affecting me in Rocket League when I was trying to stream. I know that the stream always is going to affect it because then you're adding that to the bandwidth. But the way it's not like your car just like jumps around a little bit, but the way the physics work in that, like it not only moves your car, but then your momentum is all fucked up because like it'll teleport you a spot, but then it'll like tilt your car forward like you actually just moved. It's hard to even explain. You're just bouncing around all over the fucking place. And that damn ball is so hard to like judge to begin with its floaty, bouncy physics. But
Yeah.
I was having much more fun on Rocket League last night when I wasn't streaming. I talked about it on Twitter, where it was one of those nights that, well, I was getting frustrated because so many people, like we lost a match in overtime, and I had like maybe 110 points, and everybody else had at least like 300 or more, and somebody on the other team, he ended up being in a couple of the other matches, and he was just a dick anyway. And you don't let that get to me because I've been around long enough to know some people are just trolling, whatever. Mm-hmm. But he was like, "It's a good game, except Vegetable Man." That's my Steam name. Like, you eat ass or something like that, or you suck. And it's like, well,
well, none of that is untrue, but you have no right.
Right. Well, part of it, I get frustrated because it's like one of the reasons I have less points than the rest of my teammates is they were both very offensive-minded players. So I tended to hang back in the midfield where you get shit for points in the midfield because you don't get the clearing or save points, but you also don't tend to get shots on goal and that kind of stuff.
It doesn't Stats don't tell a little story.
Right. It doesn't mean you're not contributing.
Will tell you that.
Although I couldn't argue too much because last night was one of those fucking nights where every time I try to rocket jump to the ball, I'd just like narrowly miss it to the side and that kind of shit. So I was having a bad night. But just to add insult to injury, one of my teammates was like, "Man, that guy's being a dick, but he's not completely wrong about it." And I'm like,
back me up, asshole.
Yeah. But it was one of the, I didn't even say anything. Well, the one guy that was really starting it, he started, I was on his team on the match before that, and we won. And I was in second like place with my points, like just barely behind him. But he kept trying to like he kept saying like, "You okay, Veggie? You okay?" And I wouldn't answer because I'm playing with fucking gamepad. If I put my gamepad down to type, that's not going to end well. Right. But I think he was kind of pissy that I wasn't like getting into it with him on chat. But it was just one of those nights where you're just like, "Shut up! Oh, I'm going to go to bed and cry now."
Yeah, Rocket League doesn't seem like a safe trash talk zone because that game is so goddamn like. You can think like, "Oh, I'm on a roll. Nothing can happen to me." And then like the next game, it's like, "Hey, nice job with your like one fucking clear ball."
Yeah.
Like point.
It's how I was in Counter-Strike where I'll have nights in Rocket League. It's not just like I'll have a match, but I'll have nights where it's like I'm the best player I've ever fucking seen. I'm like flying upside down and hitting a ball cross court to in goal. And then the next night I can't even hit a ball that's slowly rolling towards me. Like I'll zoom right past it and miss it completely. I don't fucking get it. But so that was a fun night. When the trash talk is bad, but it's also like your play's kind of backing it up. It's like yeah.
I mean, hey, anybody who's ever played any basketball will tell you like you just gotta suck it up and
take it.
Yeah.
Of course, it made it easier to take because I play ranked matches now. I was ranked way higher than both of the people that were bitching. It's like, well, if nothing else, the rank speaks for itself that on average, I'm way better than you. But
yeah. See, trash talk doesn't really affect me. Like, the most you'll get like out of like hostility is like, "Oh, fuck you."
Yeah.
But, like I get more annoyed at like good sportsmanship. Like, "Hey man, you tried. Go to hell."
That is worse.
I fucking sucked. All right.
It's like
Just say
if I'm
sucked.
that bad that you think you need to make me feel better about myself, that is way worse than trash talk.
Yeah, and I'm kind of
Like, don't worry
Like,
about it, man. I'm sure you're still a good person. You're like, what? Shut up.
like, you know, you'll never beat me up more than I beat myself up. You know, it's you can talk all the shit you want. I believe me, I've heard and said it all to myself in the mirror. Uh, everything about Rocket League, oddly enough. Um,
That is still such a great. The thing that I'm finding that's really funny is I've bitched every time they've taken Snow Day off the main menu, and
mhm.
it's back, or at least it was last time I looked. But now I find myself playing the regular mode. Like now that they kind of took it away and forced me to try to learn like actual Rocket League, like
Right.
bouncy ball physics, I find myself playing that a lot more than I play Snow Day.
Yeah, and I haven't had time to play it really. I have such a like barrage of like intense and casual games right now to play that it's
Yeah.
like I
Although
had
I
to
keep seeing you in Devil Daggers, like
you
every
know
10 minutes, like
but
Ben's
that's a
playing Devil
great
Daggers.
right because that's such a great game for just like hey I got 10 minutes, you know, let's see if we can get a run going. And of course I can't. Like I got to 134 seconds like a week and a half ago and I haven't been able to top it since. Um
One
it
day.
feels like a fucking lifetime. Um
That's a lot of time. It's one of those things. Time is such a
2
weird.
minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've only done that twice now. I've only survived 2 minutes longer than 2 minutes in
Well,
that twice.
yeah, 240 some seconds. You said.
Or I'm sorry, I mean a minute. Uh,
Oh,
I lasted 134.
okay. It's
So
like,
2 minutes.
yeah, I was gonna say if you're 240 something, I'm like that's 4 minutes. That's a long
Yeah,
time in a game like
yeah.
that. Like, but time is. I was thinking about that this morning because I was sitting here, and I know I have to like get in the shower no later than like a certain time, otherwise I'm fucked. And I'm sitting here watching. I was like, I had 3 extra minutes between when it was and when I absolutely had to get up. And it's like those 3 minutes are gonna go by so fucking fast because I don't want to move and get ready for work. But
Right.
then as soon as you're at work, those same 3 minutes are like an hour long. Like
Yeah.
it's weird how our perception of time, you know.
But well, yeah, especially when you're under threat by the legions of hell. Turns out that when you're being chased by a goddamn army of fucking skulls and just yeah, that turns out 10 seconds is a long fucking time. Um but yeah, I also kind of want to talk about finishing up Dark Souls 2 because I didn't really get a chance to explain like on the final episode of the stream, the archive that's on YouTube, it kind of cut out like I always like wait 10 seconds like when I start streaming to start talking and stuff because like the conversion it just doesn't save it. And usually 10 seconds is a good buffer. The first few seconds are gone. Um, but this time for some reason they cut out like the first 2 minutes and like which is great when you're trying to finish a game that you've been playing for over a month.
This long monologue and it's
Yeah, and luckily nothing like really important was missed. But I was planning on like I had done the last bit of DLC the episode before, and I like kind of like I finished the two mandatory bosses, and all the DLC has at least one optional boss. And I had left that episode saying like, okay, I'll come back and do the optional boss. Um, so I kind of wanted to talk about why I didn't do that optional boss because I looked into it. And so if you don't know about the final DLC of Dark Souls 2, it's the snowy area. It's just a fucking blizzard. This like ruined castle just engulfed in snow. And the optional boss, you have to go off to this sort of side area, hop in a coffin, and you fall like the coffin slides down. I don't know why this is in every Dark Souls game where you get in a coffin and end up God knows where. But
or a different gender, but
or a different gender. Now, yeah, this game has two coffins that fuck you up. Um, so you like the coffin slides down and you end up in the frigid outskirts is the area, and it's just what you would imagine, just a giant field in a blizzard. And you can barely see in front of you. And even when you like, this is all like I watched it online. These are people who know where to go in it. It takes them 3 minutes of full on sprinting, at least. Usually more, because you get attacked along the way by fucking electric horses. Because of course you do. And you just have to, like, anytime you look up a strategy, like, well, how do I get to that boss fight then? Everyone's like, well, summon somebody and let them, like, deal with the horses, and you just sprint. And it takes a long time, but you'll get there. And you would have to do that every time you died to the boss. And the boss is just, I got to rewind a bit. The first boss of the DLC is just a snow tiger. And it's a pretty tough fight. I needed a lot of people to help, which turned into the pattern for most of that end game there. And then this optional boss is just two tigers. So,
It's like, oh, that's imaginative. So you don't even get like this cool, unique boss. It's just
there are two of them now. And I was just like, I kind of thought about it. I was just like, yeah, no, I'm not fucking doing that. Like, this is not a complete playthrough of Dark Souls 2. Like, if I decide something sounds like needless fucking work, like, I beat the DLC. Technically, I did all the mandatory stuff, so fuck that.
well, and it's like you said last week, for people that aren't familiar, these optional bosses in the DLC seem like they were very much just designed to get multiplayer into play. Like,
Right, they're very co-op driven.
right.
That, you know, then again, like I said, a lot of these, even the bosses at the end game, I couldn't do until I got help. What I didn't know is when I got help, I was going to get fucking Captain King shit of Dark Souls. This dude shows up. He has two swords that are bigger than my one sword, and he's dual wielding them. And he's a fucking god. And I like the final boss is it's a different than a lot of Dark Souls bosses, where it's like a kind of 3-stage boss. It's different bosses, but you go into the boss room, and after you kill one, the next one comes in, and then the next one comes in. And I was having trouble. Like, the first one is a 2-on-1 fight if you don't bring somebody in with you. And I was just sort of like, you know, I could probably learn this because I was doing a lot of damage to him, but it's just a pain in the ass because you kind of have to kite him around and, like, just sort of slowly take them out one by one, and it was just sort of a pain. So I was like, well, if I can get some help, maybe I can kill them, probably die to the next part of the boss fight. But like I said, I brought in fucking Zeus or whoever that was, and like, really, it was kind of anticlimactic. Like, I didn't really feel like I fought any of those bosses.
See, that makes me wonder, like, two things. Like, one, there's apparently this player out there that's so, like, skilled and leveled up and geared up that he just sits around and randomly helps people.
Yeah, he is.
But
Fucking,
is he really helping you, or is he taking away all satisfaction of completing the game?
not really, because like, and this is kind of what I realized why I like Bloodborne a little more than Dark Souls, is because the way, like, I was reading an article the other day where it was sort of talking about, like, how, you know, the subtle things that make Bloodborne different. Like, Bloodborne isn't just another Dark Souls game with a different coat of paint. Like, it embraces more of the action stuff than the RPG stuff. Like, they're kind of two sides of the same coin, but one's more RPG, one's more action. And I think I prefer the action stuff a little bit more because I feel like my character is more capable of doing that sort of stuff on his own. Like, I mean, obviously with the DLC, I needed help because I was on New Game Plus, but and that stuff is great. But I still felt like I really, like, accomplished beating those bosses in those cases. Dark Souls, it doesn't always feel like I'm capable of really winning. So I don't really see it as like a badge of shame or really a badge of pride when I beat certain bosses with help. I think, too, in a lot more cases, it's like I would have never been able to do that if you couldn't have people there.
Or, like, found some way to cheese it, like...
Right. You know, a lot of arrows. and shit, which happened quite a bit. That was a huge problem I was having with the DLC, where it just felt like a lot of these bosses, I just had to bring people in and pick them off with arrows, and while they distracted them. Bloodborne, it felt like I still had to kind of learn enemies' patterns, even if I did have help. And
Yeah. Now, I thought I was in trouble because you had said something about how you're like, oh, I'm going to make you one day stream all of Dark Souls 1 because I've never beat that.
right,
And
and you need to grow up.
immediately after saying, yeah, I'd be willing to do that, somebody tweeted, Dark Souls for free on PC. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
but
fuck.
it was EU.
Yeah, I didn't notice that until after I
Well, I've heard
retweeted
like
it.
US people got their codes for it, but it sounded like more people, more often than not, were not getting
Yeah,
if they
I
were
didn't.
US.
It's set up to 5 to 7 days, but as soon as I saw that, I'm like, I'm not expecting my code to show up. But
But I don't know
we'll
how
see.
they can check that if you just said you were EU.
Yeah, that's true. Like it didn't, and on the thing the form that you fill out to say it, it doesn't. I didn't see it specified anywhere, but we'll see.
Well, I mean, you pick your country, but just say
Well, true, but
like maybe it's like a trick thing where it's like, are you from England or are you from Britain? Like,
so we'll see if that comes through. I might be screwed because like immediately after saying yeah, I'll do that, that shows up. But at some
but I'll be
point,
there to help you.
yeah,
I know
help.
all about Dark Souls.
At some point, it'll show up on the Steam sale regardless. I mean, last Steam sale they had it for like $5, and I would spend
Yeah,
$5 for it. But
yeah,
it's one of those games that when it's not on sale, I think it's still like 20 or
yeah.
$29.
It's at 20 now,
Yeah,
so yeah, and it'd be worth it for that. But I understand being thrifty,
yeah,
especially for a game you've already bought.
well, twice. Well, I didn't buy twice. I bought it once, and then I got it for
Got
free
it,
for games with gold.
right?
Um, but yeah, and then same with two. I'm like, oh, two's probably with the release of three. I'll put that on my wish list. But two's $39, I think, currently on Steam.
Yeah,
And that's for the edition you have. I forget what that's called, the Scholar of the First Sin or whatever, with all the
yeah.
DLC. So I mean, that's not like a terrible price or anything. But when there's a bunch of new games coming out, I already broke my like don't spend any money on games rule. I knew I would, but I'm still trying to be better about like buying expensive games.
Don't buy every game
All right.
that you ever want.
Now the two that I broke down with last weekend were Hitman, because those games were on sale. I got Absolution and Blood Money for like $9 total, which is pretty good considering Absolution's not that old. Uh, that's a weird series. The new one comes out Friday, and it's going to be episodic, which might actually work for that game. Not be too bad. But Hitman's just one of those series that, like, somehow every time a new one comes out, they manage to get me interested in it, and then every time I play it, I hate the games. But then it's like, oh, a new one's coming out. You're like, oh, well, that sounds kind of cool.
Yeah,
And I just can't override that part of my brain, like to say, Steve, you've hated every one of these. Um, Blood Money, I never played. It's way more like the ones I played, like the first two or three, I think, way back. They started in the late '90s, early 2000s, and they've got some really cool ideas. That's why it always suckers me into it. But Blood Money, I think, has the better mechanics overall as far as it being a Hitman game, but it's aged. Like controls are kind of bad. It's really easy to kind of cheese the AI. Um, like I got a really good score, like a really good stealth score on one of the early missions I just did in it, even though I used a machine gun to take out an entire mansion full of fucking people. Like
because they literally didn't know what hit them.
right, because
They
that's
were
what happened. Like
stealthy.
everything went to hell. So I hid in the corner of a room by the door that like the one entryway. So as people would walk into the room, I just gun them down. And so I think it registered as them not seeing me, but
Yeah,
yeah, it was not stealthy. So I mean, it's older, so it has that kind of stuff. Then Absolution works way the fuck better. It's modern, it controls really well, it looks awesome, but the disguise system is fucking stupid because if have you played any of the Hitman games?
never.
No. It one of the key like things in any Hitman game is if you take somebody out, you can switch clothes with them and disguise yourself.
As you
Uh,
should.
right. And if you disguise yourself as a security guard, now you can walk into areas where security guards are supposed to be without much questioning. Well, in absolute
Or you can dress as a painter and look like a painter in situations where there shouldn't be a painter.
painter, right? And in those cases, you draw attention. But it's funny because you're just like, I'm just here to paint. Don't pay no mind to me. I got my bucket.
Paint the wall red with his blood. I mean white, Chris.
Right, yes.
Eggshell white.
With this paintbrush that looks like a machine gun. But in Absolution, they added a thing where you still can do that, but if you say you kill a police officer and you're wearing a police officer uniform, that'll work for everybody except any other police officer will instantly know that you're not a cop from like 100 yards out, which is ridiculous because it puts you at a, if you're dressed like your normal like hitman in a suit, you can walk right by these guys and they won't pay any attention to you. But as soon as you dress up like a cop, they're like, hey, I'm Chicago PD and I know every single Chicago PD officer and you don't seem to be one of them.
No, no, I'm on the gang force.
Right. Well, I've got friends on our small local county police department that don't know, like, maybe 10% of the other officers, the ones you work with on shift. So I get, like, it should be a thing where if you get too close to them, like if I walk up to you and start trying to, like, talk to you, they'll see through my disguise pretty quickly. But not from, like, 100 yards away through a crowded, like, street. So that gets really fucking annoying because you're almost better off to not do the disguises whatsoever. Basically what it does is it turns the game into a flat out stealth game. You have to just hide behind cover and like watch their patterns and just go about it that way, which would be fine, except for that's never been what Hitman's been about. And when I looked around on it, because one of the first thoughts I had was, well, I have this on PC, I bet there's been mods. So I kind of looked it up, and my complaint is a very, very, very common complaint about Absolution. Like, a lot of people were pissed at the disguise system. Apparently there was a mod fairly early on, but EDOS shut it down. They patched the game so it wouldn't work, and if you like get caught using it, it counts as a cheat or a trainer rather than a mod. And a lot of people were bitchy because they're like, oh, well, they just don't want to admit that their design was bad. And well, the real issue is that they have leaderboards. Like, the better you do at them. Yeah. And so I kind of get it. Like, you can't let people mod it because that'd be unfair to the leaderboards. But they should have a moddable mode that just says, okay, you can use mods, but now it won't count towards
it's like the old days of, like, when games still had cheat codes, but leaderboards were first showing up, where it was like, all right, if you use this cheat code, then none of this applies to like your online stuff.
Right, which would be fine. But I get it. They didn't want to bother adding that in, so they're just saying, no, you can't mod the game in any way. So I'm curious if the new Hitman will take these complaints into account. And it's one of those damn things where it's like, if it does, it'll be like, well, fuck. Now I'm tempted to play it again.
Yeah, we'll see. I've heard a lot of different things about Hitman over the years that I've never, like, nothing pushed me neither away from it or towards it as something I wanted to do. It was just sort of, that's a thing that's there. And some people play it, and I'm not really one of them. But
more power to.
That's that's a lot. That's like a lot of the games you play.
Yeah. So the one thing that I like about the new one being episodic is if I decide I do want to take a chance on it, I can buy just the first episode for like 15 or 20. I think it's $20, which is still a lot for a single episode, but it's cheaper than having to make like a $60 or $70 investment to see if you like something.
Well, the further episodes will be $30, you idiot. You gave into their whole fucking plot.
Yep. Bastards. So,
and you have to buy it, or you'll go to jail. You understand?
Well, yes, you have to buy it.
Once you buy one, you have to buy them all. That's illegal. That's in the README.
I'm waiting for my letter from the IRS on that because I've still only played episode 1 of Life is Strange, and I think there's a Telltale one that I didn't play all of them. I'll be waiting for my tax return. They'll be like, no, we're withholding this until you buy the rest of those games, you cheap son of a bitch. Support developers, you asshole. The more
They
money,
trusted you. They
the more,
trusted you as a member of their audience.
well, the more money they make, the more taxes we can charge them. So fuck you, go buy their stuff. But yeah. So I did play the Division for like 5 minutes yesterday because
Yeah.
A, I'm an idiot.
I've seen people waiting in line.
Yeah, that's
which
what I
I
wanted
find
to
hilarious.
talk about. I find it. I mean, it's terrible, but it's hilarious. Like I was mad when it affected me, but once I got around it and before it affected me, it was the most hilarious thing in the world.
Well, here's like I understand being infuriated, but here's why it's funny. You people are waiting in line. Like you're not saying like screw this. You're saying this is fucked up. Okay.
Well, and
Like,
see,
and
that's
you
the
get in
thing.
queue. It's-
What they're talking about. There's two things at the very beginning of the game too. It's like 30 seconds in. It's before you can actually really do anything. You get to this safe room, which is one of the hubs that has other players in it, and you have to talk to a person. And when you talk to them, you come out in a hallway that has a small, like a regular sized doorway back out to the main room. And the first thing people were doing is they figured out you can't pass through other players. So if you fucking stand in that doorway as everybody's trying to progress, they come out into this hallway. There's no other exits, and you're just standing in the doorway. They're fucking stuck. They can't do anything. Now, technically, you can log out and back in, and your character won't start in that hallway. But so people were doing that to block people's progress. But the other problem is when you come out of that doorway, you're supposed to interact with a laptop that's on a table in the main room to get your
gotta all
mission.
check our email at once.
Right. And because you can't pass through other players, and the area where you can interact with this thing is very small, it's right in front of it. Plus, there seems to be some kind of, I don't know if it's a glitch or on purpose, but if a player is currently in there interacting with it, you can't, like, you can hit the button to interact with it if you can manage to squeeze close enough, but it won't do anything. So players took it upon themselves to form a line behind this laptop, and it's just hilarious. But it wasn't going anywhere because there's also some kind of glitch that affects a handful of people where you can interact with it and it just won't fucking work. And people are too stubborn to just be like, well, 'cause all you need to do is log out and back in and try again. But they'll sit there for like a half hour trying to get this fucking laptop to work. So while they're doing that, nobody else can do shit. And you can't progress. There's really no other content you can do because this is like the first thing you need to do. Once you do it, the whole world's fucking open and you can go do whatever you want. But you have to go through this little gateway. And it was just funny. And I stood there, like when I got in last night, we had company over and I was basically just downloading the game because I'm such an idiot. I didn't preload it. And I went in and I got to that point and I was standing like on the other side of the table because there's some NPCs just standing there. They don't do shit, but they're like supposed to be like the ones running this room. And so I'm like, I'm going to stand on this side and just be an employee because it's easier. Yeah, but I stood there for like 10 minutes and I don't think anybody moved through that line. And then I decided to try. I logged out and back in, and it put me in an instance that there was like 8 people in the room, and none of them were using the computer. And so I was able to do it real quick before anybody else needed it and progress fine. And I think that's a lot of it is these people either don't know or they're too stubborn to just like log out and back in until they get into a room that's moving.
Yeah.
But they're like, man, I have to wait in line. It's like, well, only because you're idiots. But it is a weird oversight from Ubisoft in that, like, I kind of like that players can't just phase through each other because they're trying to, you can't phase through people in real life.
That's why you need like physics engines to apply to player characters,
So
so
you
I
push
can
them.
like actually tackle you,
Right.
get you out of the way.
Now, the real solution would have been to give it a wider interaction area so more than one person can use it at a time and add more than one fucking laptop. Like,
Maybe no fucking laptop at all because this is a goddamn work of fiction,
right.
and you could
Well,
just
and you
have
all
like
have like these high-tech watches that could have fucking downloaded your
yeah,
mission to your watch.
fucking,
like,
if Snake in MGS5 has a goddamn holographic doohickey, you should have it in the Division. Just,
But here's what... Well, I made the comment. Like I said, there's 2 NPCs. They're supposed to be like military people standing behind the desk, and there's like a desk sitting there, and there's this one laptop, and there's all these players that can't get through this line, and it's not moving anywhere. And people are pissy about the queue, and I'm like, but is it a bad design, or is it the most realistic depiction of government inefficiency that there's ever been? Because it's like the damn like BMV. They're sitting there like, yeah,
Well, I mean, yeah, of course, like in an apocalyptic scenario where there's some horrible disease and humanity's fighting to survive, and this is the government's like last initiative to protect mankind. It'd probably work like that. And you just
yeah. Everybody will be like, nope, nope, we're not cooperating. Well, that's what probably made me more annoyed is that in the same room in the other corner, there's another military guy that you can interact with, and he'll sell you gear. And I'm like, at this point in the story, it's like you said, you're this like super, super top secret trained operative that got called in. Like apparently, like your neighbor or anybody could have been one of these. It was so secret, nobody knew. And when you get the call, you just go because you're the Division. And it's said just like that in the voice work. But so you show up, and then there's this gear vendor, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you can buy guns." I'm like, "Wait, you're calling us in to save the world? You have a bunch of guns back there, right? Like, shouldn't you be fucking giving me my gear? Like,
you haven't earned that gear, and you can only earn that gear when you've accumulated enough dollars, son.
so
You can't just fucking be. I can't hand you my best guns. I don't know what you're gonna do with it. You might get fucking killed in the dark zone in like 2 seconds.
well, it's true. Maybe you should have to prove your worth first, because you could have maybe just found this glowing watch like." Somebody left it on their bedside table. You might not actually be a Division agent. But the other rant I got into this week, and it was actually before the game came out, but one of the enemy, like, I don't know, groups of people, I forget what they're called, but they're basically these people. The Division is in part happening because of this, like, biological weapon that's hit the city. And these people came together. Their idea is, well, we have to burn the city clean. Like anybody that's infected, all the bodies. So basically, they're all people that go around in full hazmat suits with flamethrowers and like burn basically anybody they come across. Because even if you're not infected, they assume that you could be and that you should burn. And I kind of get that. It makes sense. But
Well,
my question is, where the fuck did all these people get flamethrowers? Like, is that something that Walmart stocks? Like, I didn't think it was, but apparently there's
I don't really hang out in their sporting goods section, but
apparently they're so common that there's a whole army of people in this cult that own flamethrowers. Like,
I mean, if you dedicate your entire being to setting the world on fire, you probably know how to put one together.
that's what I was imagining, was that there was just a bunch of people that bought flamethrowers on an Amazon Black Friday sale, and they've had them sitting in their garage. They're like, "Oh, I got that." And they're like, "I don't have any use for it." And then when this plague hit, they're like, "Fuck yeah,
Well, I mean,
flamethrower
like,
time."
mechanically, I can wrap my head around, like, mechanically, a flamethrower is a very simple idea. Like George Carlin said, there are some people who I want to be on fire. I want to put fire
Sure, but
on
these
them,
aren't
and
these,
they're
like,
all the way over there.
Clandestine. I mean, technically, you can make a flamethrower with a lighter and a can of hairspray, but like these are full on like packs strapped with like the actual flamethrower gun, like World War II.
It's propelling some flammable shit, and there's a flame on it. Like that's like I said, if you think your whole existence is bent around burning the diseased, then you probably could put one together. You probably get it cheaper than you fucking Division assholes.
Yeah, that's my. Why don't I have a flamethrower? I don't know if you can get them in the game.
Yeah, I'm sure you will in an update in a year.
Become a flamer. Wait, let's rebrand that real quick.
Yeah. So far, the best thing about the Division to me is it sounds like the being able to shut car doors.
Yeah, and car trunks. If you jump on the car, if the trunk's open, you can climb up on the trunk and.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a very good door closing simulator. Which I'd like to take credit for, but somebody wrote a whole article about that when the beta came out. But
fair enough.
Yeah. So, well, I don't really have any more. I also started Valkyria Chronicles. I'm probably not saying that right.
No, that's how I say it.
Okay, cool. I wasn't 100% sure I even spelled it right in my notes here, but yeah, it's a thing. Like it's interesting.
Yeah, I got it. I picked it up. I got a like coupon for, like, I was able to get it for like $5.
Yeah,
So,
that's what I think. It might have even been less. I bought it on a Steam sale like a year ago, and I just never installed it or played it. And I started that last weekend, and it's not what I expected because I didn't know much. I knew it was like a tactical RPG game, but I was expecting like an overhead like Final Fantasy Tactics or Fire Emblem, and I mean, basically it is, but they go into that third person
yeah,
perspective.
because it is like it's kind of that sort of game, sort of mixed with like a third person shooter.
But it's way more. It looks more third person shooter than tactics, but it's really more tactics than third person
Right.
shooter. It's. But
Yeah, your turns are like, I don't know if it's timed or it's distance. I
it's
think it's
yeah, it's just well, your any action you do eats into your meter, and you have X amount of meter. So if you run, and then you can only attack once per turn. The part that I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around, but it's good. It kind of forces you to not take all the time in the world, but enemies, if you're just sitting, it's your turn and you go into that action mode. As you're sitting there, the enemies will constantly, at a fixed rate, fire at you. So you can't just sit there and take like an hour to figure out what your next move is because you're getting shot at the whole damn time.
right.
But from somebody that's come from things like Final Fantasy Tactics or Fire Emblem, that seemed really fucking unfair to me. It's like it's not even your turn, but you get to take as many shots at me as you want, and I only get to take like one shot at you. And when you shoot at something, they get to counterattack. I'm like, that feels like it puts you at a huge disadvantage on your offensive turn. But what I had to keep reminding myself is, yeah, that might feel unfair, but your characters do the same thing to them on their turns. So
Right.
it's just part of the mechanics. But
Yeah. It's kind of like playing chess and like, man, your fucking queen is bullshit. She can go anywhere. It's fucking
garbage,
garbage.
right. But it's like playing that timed chess where you have to hit the thing. But not only that, but while you're waiting, like making your turn, your opponent gets to flick you in the forehead once every like 2 seconds.
And you beat the shit out of him with a chair.
Sure. Yeah. But I like it, and I really love the art style. I think the story seems kind of cool. I love the setting, but I just haven't played it much. I think I played for the first like
Yeah.
2 or 3 missions.
I wouldn't know anything about that. I finish everything I start. XCOM.
Yeah, that's
That
what
fell off hard for me.
I was
Like
going to ask because you finished Dark Souls. Have you actually like actively been playing anything yet, or are you still trying to kind of figure out what to dive into next?
I kind of that I sort of last week where I hit a point where it felt like I was really focused on finishing Dark Souls 2. And then now I kind of just unwind and I'm still playing NBA, but I just sort of needed a little bit of a breather. And now I'm sort of thinking about what else I want to get into. And honestly, XCOM 2 isn't high on that list. It's just like the game is not bad, but it's really like I am not craving that sort of stress right now.
Yeah,
Prefer much other sorts of stress.
Yeah, it didn't grab you the way that I thought it would, but
Well, I mean, I think it's just in a lot of ways a more inferior game to Enemy Unknown. Like the stuff I don't like, the stuff I wasn't thrilled about with Enemy Unknown, I like is the stuff I outright hate in two. Like, I wasn't like huge on the base building stuff. I wasn't huge on like the like management aspects of it, but I could handle it because they made it so accessible. And here it feels a lot more strict and it feels a lot more mandatory that you like really put your effort into making sure that everything is okay before you start your next mission. And the game just keeps throwing missions at you the whole fucking time. So you never really feel like you get that grip to like, okay, now I understand XCOM 2. Now I can, keep going and feel like I'm making progress. Like, and it's kind of what you pay for when you get that game. But there is something to be said about a game where it's like, I don't feel like I'm playing to beat it. I feel like I'm playing to just not fuck up. And if I want that, I'll play Devil Daggers because that's
that'll,
that's over in a few seconds at least. XCOM 2, I could ruin my entire playthrough at any given point.
Yeah, things go to hell in that so fast. Appropriately, I just as you started talking about XCOM 2, flipped over to Twitter and saw that its first DLC comes out next week, though.
Don't give a shit.
The other thing that popped up was some article from Games Radar, which I thought was one of those that was getting shut down, but I guess not. That Dark Souls 3 trades the series Mystique for accessibility. And it's like, well, Mystique and accessibility are two different things, but I think I see what they're trying to say there. I didn't read the article because we're kind of in the middle of a podcast, but that is something I kind of worry about with 3. Like, as those games, first 1, then 2, then Bloodborne, and now 3 are getting more and more popular with each release, are they going to, I don't want to use the term dumb down because I hate that, but are they going to gear them more generically, get away from what made them Dark Souls?
I think the thing I read about them, and it might have been Games Radar, but the thing that was coming that a lot of people were sort of noticing with 3 is that stuff isn't as like hidden, that it doesn't build up to a lot of like the big moments. It just sort of feels like it's throwing a lot of sort of typical Dark Souls stuff at you really fast, and it's kind of top loaded that way. Like it's almost more focused on doing justice by the trailers than doing justice by the series. That's the criticism I've heard. But I've also sort of heard the other take on it, which is, how much, like, at a certain point, these games, like, are going to get less, subtle. And I'm like, especially from a story standpoint, that's a lot of the stuff I've heard is like, like they liked how stuff sort of like you had to dig for it, and it feels like 3 kind of beat you over the head a little bit more. But at a certain point, like how many times can you tell this story of a world dying? And like the nuances, like the things that like each game focuses on is surprisingly different and deep. But if 3 is this, farewell, then you like, how much more meat is on that bone?
Right.
And I can understand that concern, but I've been playing these sorts of games like nonstop since like November, pretty much. I got a little bit of a break in December, but then I went right back into fucking 2. And I just like the structure of game, and like I don't even see it as a thing that necessarily needs to be Dark Souls, and I think that's proof with Bloodborne. And there's that samurai game from I want to say Team Ninja. I think it's called like Neo, like NIOH or something like that.
Yeah, I've vaguely like heard of that, but
yeah, and it's kind of like they're taking that same sort of style of game, but they're trying to do their own thing with it. And I don't think it looks as good right now, but I like that style of game because it's this really like skill-based throwback to older lessons in game design, but it also leaves room for really interesting storytelling. And I think that'll be Dark Souls legacy more than anything. Like I think that series will probably solidify itself, for everything it did right. But I think it's also going to sort of open this door for a lot of developers where it's like, we can make a game with this sort of that requires this sort of skill and is this focused on challenge, but we're not like limited to, it doesn't have to be a goddamn indie platformer to make a game that hard. That sort of throws back to that sort of old idea of like, here's a really daunting task when you first pick up the controller and gradually you come to conquer it. And so, like I said, I don't think they can keep doing it forever. I honestly, I think as far as Dark Souls goes, I have probably about enough patience for one more of them, and that'll be 3.
be perfect.
Yeah.
But then you need at least 2 more Bloodborne, so.
Yeah. keep making Bloodborne because I need my top hats. Fransworth needs his top hats. Fransworth needs to not be a blue alien.
Should they go through like the whole life cycle? Like the next one's like Blood grade school,
Grade school.
and then like Blood post grad, and
Yeah. Yeah, I don't. I'm curious what like I'm kind of at the point now where I'd like to see From do something else. Because like I said, like these games are there now, and like with 3 coming out, it's like we know they do this thing really well. But I also know they've done other shit, and I'd like to see them like
let's get them on like Mike Tyson's Punch Out or something.
Well, I mean, they made Enchanted Arms, and that wasn't a great game by any means, but it was a very interesting turn-based RPG.
They do when.
I mean, they've done a lot of stuff. They've
I'm trying to
surprisingly
think, like
been around.
99 Nights or something, or was that somebody else?
Let's find out. What have you done from? Holy shit! They were not kidding.
And that's one of those like fun things to Google because I always feel like it's not going to pull the right thing up, but it does.
Yeah. Well, you do it all one word. So it doesn't look like they did that Knights or whatever thing. They did Armored Core. That was one of their first things. They did that Otogi. I think Otogi. I remember wanting to play that, but that was like their first attempt at like an action game, and that was like more in like the sort of Devil May Cry style. Yeah, and then they like kind of hit something with Demon Souls, and then kind of kept going, and they fucking still make Gundam games apparently.
Not over here, I assume.
Well, yeah, it's yeah. Well, maybe. Who knows? So they do Armored Core. And
Monhan Nikki Pokapaku Aru Muru DX. I mean, that's
favorite.
that's pretty well known.
Yeah.
I was trying to see.
But it is kind of cool to like think like, because we started the show talking about like studios closing. And like From Software has been around in some capacity apparently since 1994. At least that's when Kingsfield first released, and like they had some success. Obviously, like I've heard of Armored Core, I've heard of Otogi and shit, but they didn't really become this sort of household name until Demon Souls and Dark Souls, and that didn't happen until like 15 years later.
Yeah, and I'm looking. I see they did Tenchu as well. I'm trying to see if they did all of them or if they picked up that series. Like,
I'm not seeing Tenchu on my list, but maybe
I'm right on their homepage. But
I'm on like their wiki.
Wikipedia needs to get their shit together.
Maybe, or maybe they're taking fucking credit for shit they didn't do.
And I think the other thing, aren't they both developer and publisher? So there might be a difference between, like, maybe these are just ones they published and didn't develop. But anyway, so yeah, a lot of games.
Lots of stuff.
But that you've got like a month to relax.
Yep. Chill out.
Yeah. So
I'm going to do
that's
that.
A show.
Yeah. I'm going to go away and chill out. God damn it.
Like how mad you are about chilling out.
I'm fucking calm. God damn it. There hasn't been anything this week, but there is stuff that has been going up on njoystic.com. Written stuff where we can process our anger and, phrase it just right so that publishers never send us review copies ever again.
Right. That's the key.
That's the key. So if you don't want to check out the site, you can always follow at Njoystic on Twitter, and it'll let you know when that stuff goes up. Or you can follow Steve at Phaser3D so you know what he's doing at work. It's probably not work. It's
probably just tweeting stupid things.
Right. Or you can follow me at BP Malak, who I only tweet when I probably want to complain about something, but sometimes I'm funny. That's what I've been told.
I think so.
Yeah, three people like me
Yeah.
occasionally. So,
Toodaloo.
toodaloo.